Hey, hey, Blue Table fans. Sean here. Yeah, this is my haircut nowadays. I would not look good with the short hair anymore. Believe me. And yeah, I see the back of my head sometimes on my videos. I'm like, oh, I gotta trim that up. It looks like my dad used. He was in the days where you had Brill cream and you slicked your hair back and had like a ducktail coming out. That was sort of the mode back then. And yeah, my dad died when he was 62 of throat cancer. And he was not thrilled about it. He was like, this sucks. Because he worked hard his whole life to get to retirement. And he actually worked harder so he could retire earlier. And then he's like, oh, you got 3 months to live. I'm like, oh, that's brutal. So anyway, I, however, have not smoked or drank my entire life, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, and not condemning anybody that does in any way. But for me, I've actually had a pretty, what's that called? Living clean or something like that? I don't know. But I guess I don't always eat that healthy. But overall, I do actually eat really well. I cook my own meals. I use lots of vegetables and good ingredients. So there's that, I suppose. All right, what I want to do today is look at, talk about Fantasyland just a little bit. Because I always talk about the past. I tell stories. I hope they're interesting. And then I talk about things that are going on right now. But rarely about how I might like things to go. So, and I've explained in another video the difference that I make between a goal and a vision. A goal is something where you set it and then you devise steps or you do work, you take action to fulfill it. Whereas a vision is something whose benefit is more to keep your eyes open for opportunities and also to make you feel good. And just but there's no thing where you feel like you have to sort of pursue it. It's like a daydream would be actually a better way of saying that. By the way, before I did this video, I talked for like 20 minutes on another video. There you go. Believe me, this is better for everybody. So about in something like 2015, I had a mentor, and she did a lot for me. It helped me sort of work my way into my own sort of personal finding my inner peace. And so 2015, I called that the summer of enlightenment, where I actually got rid of all those voices out of my head that were tormenting me all the time. And I don't know how depression works. I don't know what's going on in anybody else's mind, but in my mind, I was actually able to do a lot of reading, do a lot of exercises that I just came up with myself and sort of get under my own hood and rewire things to where it is now. I feel good most of the time. Like the worst sentiment I feel ever usually is just frustration. And even then I recognize that it's happening and I'm like, oh, okay, great. If I'm on the road and I'm like getting kind of worked up, I just pull over and, park the car and just relax for a little bit. And, and that usually just clears everything. I'm like, oh, okay, there's really no hurry. Let's get back into traffic and have a good time. So, yeah, I became very self-aware and learned what I called walking meditations. Because some people are like, oh, meditate. I can't just sit in a chair and think about nothing. So anyway, back to the topic at hand. My mentor contacts me. She's like, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, not so great. And she said, well, what are you doing for your positivity every day? And I said, well, I'm not doing anything. And she's like, well, there's your problem. So she gave me an assignment. And this is an exercise that really helped me. It's a fantasy journal. So what you do is you by yourself, don't share this with anybody. Don't even tell anybody you're doing it, because then their opinions will come into play. And not only that, but their voice will be inside your head. So you'll be typing this fantasy journal and you'll be editing yourself, kind of holding yourself back, because you think maybe somebody might read it someday. So the rule is no one is ever going to know that you're writing this, and no one is going to read it. Ever. So you just keep it to yourself and you do it when nobody's around. I can't stress to you how important that is. There's like an oversharing thing that happens a little bit nowadays where you got to put everything on social media. Other people have to approve of you. No. Not with this one, guys. So the fantasy journal is you write it in first person and you just write your life as if it's already happened, and in living your life in a way that would please you with no restrictions at all. So mine, personally, is I find images on the internet. You just go to Google search, type in whatever you want, West Vancouver coastline, and there's a bunch of pictures that come up, and you just pull the ones that are pleasing to you. And again, the object of the game here isn't to set any goals. Your brain will start to be like, ooh, how are we going to do this? No. Get rid of that. It's only a vision. It's a daydream. It's for fun. The object is only to make yourself feel better and sort of unplug in a way and from whatever it is you're observing in your life that maybe isn't pleasing you. And so if you're writing this and you just you feel this joy, or you're laughing, that's awesome. Or you get some sort of good emotion, some sort of catharsis, great, do that. I would suggest further rules. So number 1, include pictures. Number 2 is don't include people in your story that are from your real life. And the reason is, once you start including those people, all their opinions, all the sort of baggage that they bring is going to come with that. So that would be my second recommendation. My third one would be don't bring baggage from real life. If you must, just take care of it in one paragraph. Be like, with my new money, I paid off everything that I owed, and I'm very eager to start in on new and fun things. The next thing I would recommend if you're going to undertake this project is to start slow. Don't try and do some big thing where you're like, oh, I got to organize my chapters. No. Don't do that. Just start out, just write a page of just one day in your fantasy world, whatever it is. I was in New Orleans, and this is what I did. And then I went down to Panama City. And here I met this wonderful person. And, whatever it is they look like, or put in a picture, and whatever the fantasy happens to be. But start with, because you're trying to get that resistance down inside, because your brain is going to edit this. You can't have that. So-and-so won't approve of it. How would you get the money to that? Worries about debt, or this country's dangerous. Listen to yourself. You're alone in a room. You can type whatever you want. Why would you put in, on my way back to the spa, I got mugged? Why would you do that? So start slow, because you're trying to clear a bunch of garbage out of your brain and replace it with some good feeling thoughts, some good feeling structure, so that if in real life, if it ever opened itself up to you, you would recognize it. You'd go, oh, this is that thing where I wanted to move to this other place. Okay, awesome, I'm ready for that. So you're getting your brain, you're reprogramming your brain with this exercise. And by the way, this is one of a zillion things you could do. So my fantasy journal, the first one is called Life in Valhalla. The original title was Road to Valhalla, but then I realized, after so many pages, I actually was in my version of Valhalla, or a paradisiacal setting. And so it took me 2 years to write it. I wrote 165 pages. If you took out all the pictures and blank spaces, it would be about 100 pages, but it'd be 100 pages narrow margin, like regular type font. It would be pretty huge. And of course, a lot of times I did edit myself. I was like, or caught myself editing myself. I was like, oh, you know, I didn't put this because I didn't think so. Because I thought I might publish it at some point in time. No, it's not fit for publishing. And I certainly, like, I looked at myself and I'm like, wow, I put my soul onto paper and my soul is pretty awesome. And even if it weren't, who's to judge? It just is what it is. Like, you don't drive down the street and be like, ooh, that tree's the wrong shape. Ooh, that tree's the wrong shape. Ooh, that tree needs to lean more this way. No, you just go and you see the trees and it's okay for whatever they are. It's not a problem. And same thing with humans, and treat yourself that way too. Be okay. This is your deal. And maybe through this exercise, you'll work through some things that you didn't realize were there, you know, and just be like, oh. So the basic plot of Life in Valhalla, and by the way, I've done this long enough to the point where I could tell you some basic things publicly. I know, I told you, don't ever share it, but I'm just giving you sort of an overview, because the point of the video wasn't to tell you how to do the exercise. It was like, well, Sean, what do you want in life? How would you like your life to be? And it's not something I'm trying to create, because I already did that, and it didn't work out well. And I thought, okay, now I'm going to try a different sort of way of doing this. Draw on different energies. And it really made me look around and go, huh, what's really going on in this life? You know, because I was told certain things, like, for example, work hard, go to college. And I don't regret working hard or going to college. Those were great experiences. But I'm like, oh, but did those things really have the intended consequences? No, they did not. And other things where I just kind of went off and did whatever, those actually did work out. So, as a sane human being, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't keep trying the same thing, you know, flailing my arms, trying to get results, and expecting it to work out. So anyway, in the plot of Life in Valhalla, a long-lost relative contacts me and says, hey, Sean, I have this empire, but I have this spa out on this property, and not a spa like, you know, like a couple of cabins. This is a huge, it looks like Rivendell. It's the size and scope of Rivendell from Lord of the Rings. That's what this spa looks like. And it's up in the mountains. It's a bit of a drive. And it's already up there, and there's 3 main buildings. They're named after the 3 elven rings. Yeah, I know, super nerdy. And see, but what I just did there, I made like a little apologetic for it. And that's not the whole point. And on this property, there are some houses. And they are just for people who are long-term guests or whatever. They can just live in them. And one of them is really nice. It's where my long-lost relative used to live, but now she's gone on to other things. And she's assigned somebody to run this spa. I'm not there to run anything or to be a manager for anything. I'm only there as a creative force. So I'm given this home to live in. It looks like Howie Mandel's Cape Cod house in Malibu, if you want to look that up. And then, of course, I changed the setting around it because it's in like the mountains of Colorado. And so it has sort of an English garden sort of thing around it. And it's not on the side of the road like a regular residential home. Oh no, it's out there a bit of a ways, and you can miss the gate real easy. It's one of those things where there's like a big U-shaped thing that goes in, and you drop people off at the house, kind of go out the other way. And a very short walk from that house is the workshop. And the workshop has 3 levels. It has conference rooms, it has a display and gaming area, and then underneath that it has like a proper workshop with, you know, a delivery, like garage door thing, and like all sorts of machinery, 3D printers and power tools, things like that, table saws and whatnot. To make, of course, what else? These amazing projects. And so in my fantasy worlds, I don't have a company to run. I don't have a job. And that's something to consider, because we're told things. It's like, well, where do you get the money? Well, you got to go out and do something useful. You got to and the more it is, the harder you got to work, or the riskier it is. Is that true? I don't know. Probably not for everybody, and maybe not for you. So in the fantasy world, I was like, really? And I had to work my way through this. Like, I had so much programming that I was like, I had to learn a whole new way of thinking of things, which is, well, what if the money just came? What if there was something of intrinsic value just about me that a single person with resources would want, or a bunch of people would want me to, sort of bequeath to me whatever the resources are. And I'm like, well, what would you really want? Well, I would want this house. And by the way, for many years I had a hobby of going and looking at real estate. And I wanted to look at the most, I'm like, what's out there? Because if it's really good, I want to have it in this life. I say yes. And I saw a lot. My record was $5.7 million. And those houses aren't that great. I mean, they're obviously fantastic, imported Brazilian hardwood floors and, the huge antechambers. And it's like, it would take me 15 minutes just to find my kids in here. No. Smaller is better to some degree. A great degree, actually. Excuse me. That's it for the water. So in the story of life in Valhalla, I have the workshop, and the workshop has rooms in it, almost like a really nice woodland cabin, skylight and glass dormitory with 8 rooms and 2 kitchens. And what I can do, if I want, is I can just have artists out. Artists in this field of miniatures and terrain making. And I just find them, and maybe they're moving from maybe they lost their job, or they're going from one thing to the next. And I'm like, listen, tell you what, why don't you have no expenses, and you just come out to my place and just create. And that's the contribution of myself and anyone I happen to feel like bringing into it, to this already existing structure. And at the spa, they'll have big weddings, they'll have conferences out there, but it's a ways off from my house and my workshop. But we do things, we make cosplay costumes, and among the regular miniatures battle stuff. And so we put on events too. And the managers, they profit from that, from my imagination and my productivity. And I don't have bills anymore. Everything just, because I am kind of like the guest artist. I come, I put up, and but I have resources. I'm given a fund to bring out whoever I want, have family get-togethers, excuse me, and do as I please. So there you go. That's Life in Valhalla. It's 165 pages long, and I haven't really shown it to anybody, and certainly not in detail. I certainly wouldn't publish it. And then then that one sort of came to a conclusion, and I sort of wound it down because I found myself sort of repeating things, and I was like, oh, okay, this whole thing has taken its course. And I started another fantasy universe. I call them universe. I'm writing universes, kind of like Myst, if you've ever seen that game, where the guy actually writes. He knows he has this power to write things and turn them into worlds, which I guess is like writing a video game. Like Skyrim, a group of people actually wrote a world and animated it, and if you want, you can take your consciousness and the room will fade away and all you'll see is the TV, and everything else in your life will sort of become second place, and you really, to a great degree, will actually enter those worlds. So anyway, the second one is called Inheritance Universe, and in that one, it has the same thing. There's a relative, because in my mind, I'm like, well, why would somebody want to just give me stuff? You know, how could I just have it? And of course, well, a relative. So in the inheritance universe, go figure, a relative leaves me a sum of sort of regenerating money. And so on in the story, typety type, I spend the money and allocate resources and have the life that I would like to have without restriction. So in this universe, man, it's a lot simpler than the Valhalla thing. There's a lot less people involved. I just go, I'm in West Vancouver, 221 Maple Lane is the address, and that's where I live with Holly, and we keep it pretty humble, and really I don't have a lot of people there. And then at some point during the story, I take over this neighboring property, 5363 Q Cliff Road, and that is like a giant thing, and I basically turn that into a miniatures and role-playing sort of I don't want to say man cave, because it's a very open, but like I'd say a museum. No, that's not right either. And there you go. So, and that one's like at 40 or 50 pages now, and I just write in it to make myself feel better, to daydream a little bit, and at least have it out there, because I think a lot of people, the human mind sort of gets caught up in the day-to-day until that's all that exists. It sort of like carves out your brain. And because I've walked some people through mental exercises before, and I'm like, well, if you came into X amount, I'll say like a large amount of money, say, what would you do with it? Oh, I'd pay off my debts. I'm like, but then what? Well, I don't know. I'm just like, well, you know what? At least for fun, you know, make some things up. What would you really do? And it takes a while. It took me several years to actually get to a point where I was thinking about, you know, other things, and really sort of got a view for what I would like to do. Like, for example, in Vancouver, I can't remember what it's called. It's like the Canada something, but it's like the port. Like it's by the bay, and it's basically just all these amazing restaurants and these fountains and artwork and stuff like that. And I was just like, wow. And there's videos on YouTube. It's easy to imagine all this stuff because you can just summon it up online. And there's videos of people like wandering around, and I watch them. I'm like, that's really cool. I would love to be there. And I haven't lost sight of my real universe. My real universe is kind of like a shadow of these things that I created. And I think what happens is you actually subconsciously start pulling strings in your own life, and these things actually happen. You know, I have a good life, and I have artists that visit me, and I have a lovely wife who is good to me and kind to me, and I, you know, have miniatures and do my role playing. It's really good. It's really good. And I'm not blind to what's around me either, to appreciate my own family, to appreciate the people that I do have, and also the city that I do live in. Salt Lake is really a great place to be, and I enjoy going around the town and looking at the wonderful, beautiful things that there are. Well, that's all I got to say about that, guys. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you got your inspiration for the day.